So this here is the brand new Wahoo KICKR CORE 2, but that there is also the brand new Wahoo KICKR CORE 2. In fact, I went out and bought that second unit there after I saw some iffy things that wanted me to double check my results. But more than that, I've been putting through a whole bunch of miles, both myself as well as my wife, over the last couple of months on these two trainers to figure out what works well, what falls short, and what you need to know if you're considering this or any other smart trainer in the category. So what I want to do is walk through all the new stuff on this trainer, all the tech specs, getting it set up, using it, all the nuances you need to know, as well as bits like accuracy and more. So the very first thing up is the tech specs. There we go, the tech specs. Now, I won't read through all these because honestly, they're pretty much the exact same as the Wahoo KICKR CORE 1. And by pretty much, I mean they're exactly the same as the KICKR CORE 1, minus a handful of bits they've upgraded in the electronics compartment. The overall trainer itself, aside from these new legs we'll talk about in just a moment, is the same as the past. So for example, it's got the same 16% incline, the same max wattage, the same flywheel, all that stuff remains the same. Instead, I want to talk about what's new. And the very first item that's new here is the addition of Wi-Fi. You can see a little Wi-Fi icon right there, though that icon actually has more than just Wi-Fi behind it, but in any case, they've added Wi-Fi. The main reason you'd use Wi-Fi is to sidestep issues on either Bluetooth or ANT+ connectivity to your devices, perhaps interference from a microwave or your neighbors or whatever it may be. Additionally, it'll automatically download firmware updates behind the scenes every 11 hours. It does 11 hours to create an offset in case you happen to do your trainer ride every morning at 6 a.m., for example. So it does that behind the scenes. However, that then gets to the next new feature that depends on that Wi-Fi, or largely depends on the Wi-Fi, which is the addition of race mode. Race mode will update your power numbers much faster at 10 times per second. You can see that in the upper corner there, where those numbers are updating super quick using that race mode, versus a traditional connection without race mode updates it once per second. You can kind of see an example of this roughly side by side. Now, the way race mode works here is it does depend on Wi-Fi for all applications, but if you're using Zwift and the Zwift protocol, then you can do it using Bluetooth, so you don't have to have Wi-Fi configured. In terms of the benefits to race mode, it essentially just makes things more reactive. Your avatar will react quicker to a sprint, but practically speaking, it's really only going to matter for people doing a sprint attack or something like that. Next up is the addition of the KICKR Bridge or the sensor hub. What this allows you to do is to pair accessories, for example, this heart rate strap here, or the Zwift clicks right there, to the trainer, and then in turn pair this to your application is one cohesive channel. And the main reason you want to do that is if you're on Apple TV. Apple TV has a 2 connection limit plus the remote. So in other words, if you had one Bluetooth connection as the trainer and then your second one as the heart rate strap, you'd have no ability to connect these Zwift clicks, which we'll get to in just a second. This solves that issue. It's something we've seen other companies like JetBlack and Elite have for a couple years now, and Wahoo is finally joining that party. The way you set it up is you go into the Wahoo app, you basically search for other accessories nearby, and you can pair those accessories. Relatively straightforward. The problem is, it has not been straightforward for me. I've had nothing but problems with it. I first started off with the relatively new Garmin HRM 600, came out about 6 months ago, and it's notably got the new secure Bluetooth pairing bits that are required by the EU. Wahoo supports those as well. But for every single ride I did, something went wrong. Number one, it would fail to make the connection to begin with, or number two, it would make the connection but show a static value. Number three, it would make the connection but then stop updating the values like halfway through my ride. Or number four, it would just update the values like once every few minutes. None of which were very useful. I went back to Wahoo, I said, what's up with this? And they said, we haven't seen that before. Go ahead and try the polar strap. So I tried the polar strap and it's the exact same thing. And mind you, as a reminder, this is across 2 different units and 2 different heart rate strap vendors and all these things. And I don't doubt it's working for other people, though I can't find much evidence of that on the internet, to be honest. Most people aren't bothering to use it. Wahoo says it's working for them. Wahoo's gonna keep on digging into what I'm having here, but at the end of the day, it's not working for me. And again, the idea here being that you select your trainer and it shows that heart rate value from the trainer. And they've got nifty icons on Zwift to kind of exhibit that. Again, cool concept, but it's not quite working for me today. Now, what is working for me just fine is the new status LEDs. Basically, there's 2 LEDs here. The first one, while it may look like the Wi-Fi icon, is actually for all connectivity. Now, there's an entire page you can look at to decode all these colors, but it's actually relatively straightforward. If it's flashing blue, there's Bluetooth connections. If it's flashing white, there's Wi-Fi connections. And if it's flashing red, there's ANT+ connections. If it's flashing white, blue, and red, then the police are coming after you or something like that. Meanwhile, the bottom one is actually a little bit more complicated. If it's yellow, it's booting up. If it's green, it's good to go. If it's white, the flywheel is spinning like that. And if it's orange, then Zwift is connected. I guess it's actually kind of straightforward in the grand scheme of things. If it's doing anything at all red on the bottom, again, bad things are happening and the trainer is somehow broke. There's a lot more combinations beyond that, but those are sort of the critical ones. Speaking of critical, by the way, if you're finding this video interesting and useful, if you could just watch it all the way through, that's the only thing the YouTube gods care about, and it really does help out this video and the channel quite a bit. Now, the last new thing to understand before we get this thing all set up and rolling is the change to the legs. You can see right there, the legs are now flat there. This is designed to match the Zwift Ride bike as opposed to the rounded legs in the past. There's an entire history behind this we won't get too distracted on, with the Zwift Hub having flat legs and going to KICKR CORE and back and forth, but point is, the legs are now flat. Notably, from a price standpoint, it's officially $549, though we've already seen the price down to $430 on some sales. That's what's in the first 2 months. So my guess here is that Wahoo's probably gonna have this frequently on sale in the $400-ish range. So between $400 and $500 is probably gonna be the going rate most of the time for this trainer. Now, when it comes to buying this, you basically have two choices. You can buy it with a Zwift cog that you see right there, or you can buy it with a mechanical hub that you see back there. When it comes to choosing, I think it's actually relatively straightforward. If you only use Zwift, and especially if you have multiple bikes, then the Zwift cog makes a ton of sense. The main benefit to the Zwift cog is that it works with bikes of different cassette types. For example, my gravel bike right there has a 13-speed cassette in the back, versus my tri and road bike have 12-speed cassettes. So if I try to put all those bikes on this one cassette edition down there, it's not gonna be happy land. The shifting won't work and stuff like that. But they do work on this here because this has a virtual shifting with a Zwift clicks. So the back, your derailleur doesn't move anymore with a Zwift cog. Instead, you just use a Zwift clicks to basically virtually shift inside of the trainer software. But if you use other apps, for example, Ruby or Training Peaks Virtual, etc., in that case, I'd recommend the cassette edition. And that's because those apps do not officially support the Zwift clicks and can't virtual shift using Zwift's hardware officially anyways. In some cases, like in Ruby's case, they've roughly made these clicks work, but whether or not they work long term is a bit of a debatable thing. So if you want to be able to shift and go up and down inclines and whatnot, like you see here on this Ruby route, then you need to be able to do real shifting with your real handlebars. Okay, with that all set, let's get into the box. Here is the box, here's what comes in it. At the end of the day, you're basically going to attach those two legs to the trainer. There's 4 bolts to do that, it takes just a couple seconds. And then you see this little package of bits there. You'll basically use some parts from that, whether or not you've got through axle or a quick release skewer. Now, my main complaint from a hardware standpoint sounds trivial, but it's super effing annoying, which is this tiny little cap right there. This goes on the drive side. On the non-drive side, on the other side, it's actually twist locked in. But this side, anytime you move this trainer or tilt it, like to just relocate the trainer, this little cap will fall off, and there's a 100% chance it's going to go under a couch or some other thing that's a pain in the butt to get to. I don't know why this is not locked on there like every other trainer on the planet. I wish it wasn't this cheap feeling. Now, if you got the cassette version and you don't have the cassette that you want on there, for example, it came with an 11-speed cassette, that's the only way you can buy it today. I wanted a 12-speed cassette. You need a cassette tool to go ahead and remove that cassette and put the new cassette on. Generally speaking, most cassettes are between 50 and 70 bucks, and if you don't have a cassette tool, you can probably go ahead and borrow one from a friend or something like that. With all that set, you'll go ahead and plug it in and stick your bike on it, obviously removing the rear wheel there and putting it directly on the Zwift cog. From there, you'll need to install these Zwift clicks up on your bike handlebars. If you're using the Zwift cog version, there's a lot of places you can install them: on the inside of the handlebars, on the outside of the handlebars, on the top of the handlebars, on a TT bike, out on the aero bars, on a mountain bike. You can install them wherever you want that makes you happy. No, I've got an entirely separate video on these, as well as this bit right there up in the corner, where I dive into all the nuances of that, so I won't like rehash that right here. The next thing you'll want to do is to use the Wahoo app to go and configure the Wi-Fi on this trainer. It takes just a couple seconds to pair up to your Wi-Fi network, as well as there's the KICKR bridge bits there to go ahead and pair up those sensors if you want to try to give that a whirl. With that, you're ready to go in the application of your choice and pair up a trainer. Here, for example, shows what it looks like in Zwift. Here's what it shows like in Ruby. Here's what it shows like in Trainer Road. I've also used Training Peaks Virtual as well. All these work just fine, and I was able to do it on either Wi-Fi as well as Bluetooth. In general, Wi-Fi is probably going to be your best bet here, but it doesn't matter in most cases. Once that's done, you're off and riding. The trainer will automatically replicate the gradient that you see on the screen. So for example, if you're going up a 10% incline, it'll feel like 10% incline. as long as you've updated the trainer difficulty setting in your application. For example, in Zwift, by default, that's at 50%. That means it's going to feel like a 5% gradient as opposed to a 10% gradient. Now, I've long argued if you're going to pay all this money for a trainer to feel the outdoors, then you should drag that to 100% to feel the outdoors, all 16% that this trainer allots. When it comes to that feel the inertia, this is the exact same as the Wahoo KICKR CORE in the past, and people have been really happy with that over the last 7 or so years. And likewise, I'm happy with it here today as well. Overall, it feels great. Now, I would guess that most people in a blind test between the KICKR CORE and the KICKR V6 with its heavier flywheel probably would not be able to actually tell the difference in inertia. And noting that flywheel weight, basically the heavier the flywheel, the more inertial feel that you'll have there, is only one factor in it. Other companies can have lower flywheels but do different gearing between these two to replicate and achieve the same results. Anyways, the inertia, the acceleration, the deceleration feels good in the KICKR CORE, and I'm happy with that. Likewise, from a noise standpoint, really the only noise you're going to hear is the Zwift cog or your cassette itself, basically interaction between your chain and this piece right there. You're not going to really hear much noise from the rest of the trainer. Almost all your noise is going to come from the chain touching this bit right there. So essentially, the cleaner your chain, the less noise you're going to hear. Here's a simple clip of me riding just to understand what it sounds like. Okay then, so now is a good time to talk about why I went out and bought a second unit from a review standpoint. Keeping in mind that I virtually always go out and buy the units after the fact, so I send back the media loaners and then go out and buy my own just to have long term. That's why I've got my original KICKR CORE from a gazillion years ago. That allows me to do comparisons, updates, and all that kind of goodness. But this time around, there were some weird circumstances with this unit that made me question whether or not this was representative of what you were going to get down the road. And it wasn't just one item, but rather a whole basket of items that made me concerned. The very first slight alarm bell is that when I got this unit here, it had been ridden 262 kilometers. See, there's a nifty odometer feature in the Wahoo app that shows you how many miles or kilometers any given trainer has been ridden. That's useful if you're buying a secondhand trainer. In this case, it had been ridden 262 kilometers. For comparison, the trainer that I would end up buying right there had been ridden 0.82 kilometers. In other words, just simply an automated test in the factory. Now, to me, 262 kilometers is a lot of riding for a unit going to reviewer. That means they were making sure it was absolutely perfect. And look, I'm guessing various companies will often cherry pick and validate their units, but by and large, it actually doesn't matter too much. When you're talking watches and GPS units and things like that, it's not going to matter. It's just software that's the main factor there. However, it can matter on both bike trainers as well as power meters, because sometimes trainer companies and power meter companies will reduce their costs in manufacturing by not doing additional calibration or additional QA steps behind the scenes. And that is somewhat common in trainers. But again, 262 kilometers is a lot of testing of this particular trainer to ensure it was absolutely perfect. And that, and combined with the next bit, is more important, which is that every single reviewer on launch day of the KICKR CORE 2 had to do a so-called pro spin down calibration. That is an extra secret calibration step of sorts that Wahoo gives you special support instructions on how to do, and virtually every single reviewer for the Wahoo KICKR CORE noted that their trainer was inaccurate until they did those steps. So my assumption here was that Wahoo basically did those secret steps on this unit before sending it to me. And again, I have no problem with like user-based calibration bits. I just wanted to be representative of what you're getting. Now, the next bit is that Wahoo seemed awfully hesitant to get this trainer to me and seemed to continually delay getting it to me prior to launch. And we had discussions months before launch, but when push came to shove in the final month before launch, there was just one little reason after another why the trainer couldn't show up at my doorstep. Some of that was because I was traveling, but there was a lot of opportunities in a lot of places that it just didn't happen, which showed way more hesitance than Wahoo's ever shown in the past about the products and getting them on time ahead of launch. Now, the last item in that basket of caution there was the fact that a number of you had sent in notes saying that you were having pretty substantial accuracy issues with the KICKR CORE 2. And now, don't take this the wrong way, but I honestly don't trust any of you to do power meter accuracy reviews or trainer accuracy reviews. I trust like 2-3 people in the world to do them. People like GP Llama and DesFit, where I know they know all the pitfalls and nuances and drama to doing accuracy testing correctly. For everyone else, unless someone can show me at least 2 other reputable data sources on the same bike at the exact same time, it's a bit tough. Nonetheless, let's look at some of those accuracy results, starting off with my 30x30 intervals here. In this case, there's basically 2 things that we're testing for: how quickly it gets to that set point, and then how stable stable it is once it's there, and then of course the power meter accuracy side. As you can see here in this test, it got to that set point in 2 seconds. That's basically perfect. You want it between 2 and 3 seconds. At 1 second or sub 1 second, it's actually too fast. It's like running into a brick wall, not too much fun. And if it's more than like 4 or 5 seconds, then it's just simply too long for doing shorter intervals. But good job here. This is using Trainer Road, by the way, without any problems there. And looking at the accuracy of this particular set, you can see compared to the Garmin Rally RS210 power meter pedals, as well as the SRAM Force or Cork power meter on that bike, zero problems. It was spot on across the board. In fact, here's another org workout that you can see right there. These are 3-minute repeats on a slightly different bike with a different set of power meter pedals. No problems right there. And if we look at the cadence for that workout, no issues there as well. Meanwhile, here's a structural workout my wife did on her bike with her power meter and compared to the unit. And you can see again, spot on as well. And then one last erg workout of mine for fun too. So far, so good on the structured workout side. But what about simulation mode workouts? Those are where we basically replicate the gradient going down. Here is a sim mode workout I did. Again, it is basically spot on to the Rally pedals right there, as well as a Cork unit. If you look at the sprints, up about 900 watts or so, pretty good there as well. Note that it's virtually impossible to get the exact same 1 second value in a sprint workout, just due to like timing differences between different power meter transmission rates and recording rates and whatnot. But within a few watts, as we see right here, is good. So I'm pretty happy with that. And if we look at the mean max chart for the workout as well, all is good there as well. Here's another simulation mode workout, all is well there. And then another one here, this one on Ruvi as well. All of these are looking good across the board. Now you may be wondering which unit is which unit in those tests. In other words, which one came from the media loaner and which one came from the random Spanish retailer that I bought that unit back there from? And the answer is they're all mixed up there. Pretty much every other set came from one of the 2 different units. You can look at the dates if you want in the corner there. Anything from October 31st and beyond was the new unit, and anything prior to that was the older unit. At the end of the day though, there was no difference in accuracy. They worked across the board. So with the accuracy sorted, where do we stand overall? Well, overall, I'm pretty darn happy with this trainer. Sure, it's got its quirks right now with the whole sensor bridging thing, but I'm gonna guess they're gonna figure that out pretty quickly, and then life will be grand there. In fact, it's funny when you think about it, because this trainer here, as I mentioned earlier on, is almost identical to the KICKR CORE 1, which came out 7 years ago in 2018. And so the question is, will this thing be like the KICKR CORE 2 for the next 7 years, or will there be a KICKR CORE 3 sometime before then? And I don't think it matters, because it's been so dependable as a KICKR CORE 1 and now as a KICKR CORE 2 that the hardware, the design bits here work. And as a result, I have no fear in recommending it. Now, there are lots of good competitor trainers in this category. For example, the Jetpack Victory is one that's in the same rough price point. There's also the Elite Revo right there, that brand new one that I've been testing as well, that's doing quite well at a slightly lower price point. And the Avanti, which is also in the same price point here. Note that all 3 of them are, again, very, very similar. All 3 work great in my testing across the board, and I don't really have any concerns recommending any of those 3 trainers at this kind of medium to medium budget price point. So with that, hopefully this was useful. Thanks for watching and have a good one.